And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternovich.
Hey there, listener, and welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. But guess what? I'm not going to be here next week. I am taking a week off. I'm taking the lovely Mrs. Sturtevant up to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and we're just going to hang out for a week. Sounds great. So I'll see you back in July 5th. That's when the next episode will come out. But I'm sending you off with a great episode, and it's on the power of images and how we need to use them in the classroom. Now, this is quite frankly an episode where you have to come over and look at my show notes. The images on here are fantastic, and you just kind of come have a look, daggone it. And you've probably heard the old cliche, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I did a little research on this phrase, and I was delighted to find out that before photography, people used to say a painting was worth 1,000 words. Well, that's just wonderful. So we need to use images more effectively in class. We need to use them more frequently in class. And to help in this noble quest, I have one of our amazing original sources. Her name is Alexandra Lang, and she used to camp out in my World Civ class last semester. So I'm going to talk about some iconic images from American history. George Washington crossing the Delaware, the World War I Uncle Sam, I Want You poster, the Marines hoisting the flag up over Iwo Jima, Lyndon Johnson taking the oath of office beside a stunned and blood-stained Jackie Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King lying mortally wounded on a hotel balcony while all of his associates pointed toward the assassin. Do any of these descriptions conjure up mental images? Do they inspire emotions or perhaps personal narratives? Were you curious enough that you Googled some of these descriptions? Well, that's the power of images, and we need to start utilizing them more in class. In this episode, I'm going to talk about using images in 3 ways. The first way is to help explain, describe, instill deep concepts. The second tactic is to empower students to manipulate images. And finally, I'm going to talk about the amazing power of using images as a hook. This is a wonderful episode that can absolutely enrich your curriculum. Buckle up, man. You're going to love this episode. Hey, so get this, listener. My publisher contacts me and says, I love the way Hacking Engagement is selling. How about doing 50 more? I was all over it like a cheap suit. So the name of the book is Hacking Engagement Again, 50 Teacher Tools That Will Make Students Love Your Class. And it's going to be available on Amazon's virtual shelves in the late summer of 2017. In the meantime, if you're looking for more teacher empowerment resources, as always, visit hacklearning.org. Now let's get back to the solutions part of the Hacking Engagement podcast. So here we are in the Room 111 studios. I'm sitting with an original source. I love talking to original sources, and I've got a great one here. Her name is Alexandra Lang. How you doing, Alexandra?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
And Alexandra's looking at 1 day left of high school. Is that correct?
Amen to that.
And if I didn't get her today, she was gone. I had to record this episode today or she was out the door. But I'll tell you what, I love talking to Alexandra. And I'm not going to call her Alexandra. I'm going to call her by her Sturtevant nickname, which is Lang Shui. Now, how in the world did I come up with Lang Shui? Any idea? Do you remember?
I do remember because I told you I was into interior design, and we were studying Feng Shui as our first unit, and I told you I was like really into that, and you were like, you know what? Your name was originally, I forget what my name originally was, and you changed it to Lang Shui. We just rolled with it. So.
Well, you know what? Alexandra Lang Shui, it just seems to flow. Yeah. It was getting after it.
It was Zhang originally because you took the X from my name and made it rhyme with Lang.
Oh my gosh.
It's Zhang Dynasty.
Oh my gosh, that's convoluted. So we got there somehow. We got to that name. Now, I don't know the answer to this. I mean, I'm thinking maybe interior design, but what do you see yourself doing 10 years from now?
I think that's definitely the path that I want to be on. A lot of people ask me if I want to own my own business, but I don't think I do because I won't have time to focus on like my art and like my relationships and everything. So I don't I never want to have kids. I just can't see myself doing it. Like, my worst fear is having a daughter and she being a mini-me, and I don't know what to do with that. So yeah, kids are out, but I definitely want to be, like, married, settled down, wherever my career takes me, you know, like, places.
So you see yourself doing for a living something that moves you very deeply.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I could see you, like we talked about Feng Shui in class. That resonated with you, right?
It did, yeah.
This concept of making chi just flow through structures. I like that.
I did too. Like,
so you have the most appropriate nickname of anybody this entire semester.
Yeah, I take a lot of satisfaction in that. It's a source of pride.
Okay, so I'm doing this thing. I was putting together a good lesson, and I was trying to think of a good hook. And you've heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I thought, what a great way to do this with a picture. And so I'm going to ask you something. Are pictures important? How do they move you?
I think pictures are very important because, like, as an artist, I'm always kind of, like, looking out for inspiration, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you see, like, literally millions of images every day, you know, like, as you're, like, looking around. So it's like, if something's significant enough that it stands out to you, that you want to, like, recreate that and be able to share it with other people, like, that's really, you know, I think that's pretty powerful, especially with some of the images we've seen in this class, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, world history is, like, such a, you know, huge thing. Like, every single day there's so much going on. But the thing is, like, if something, like, stood out to somebody enough that they felt that they had to capture it and show other people, you know, like, something big was going down there.
Now, when you were a little girl, did you look at pictures in books?
All the time, yeah.
I still do. When I open up a book, I love it when there's images there.
Yeah.
And I think that's one amazing thing about the internet is the internet is image-driven. And your generation is more image-driven than my generation is image-driven. So let's talk about some of the specific images that we've used in class. And maybe this will inspire other teachers to use images more. Now, the first image is this really bizarre thing called Vishvarupa. And Lang Shui and I are both looking at an image of Vishvarupa. Tell me anything about Vishvarupa. What is Vishvarupa? Do you remember?
I remember it was representing, like, the concept of, like, we are all one, you know, like, people being very connected. And this image is obviously a very literal interpretation of that. For those of you who can't see it, this guy has, like, a lot of arms, a lot of legs, a lot of faces, and then there's, like, two, like, little people that's, like, standing at the base of him, like, looking up at him, like, what is this guy?
So here's the scoop. It's the Bhagavad Gita, which is comparable to the Hindu scripture, Hindu Bible. And this image teaches what page after page after page of scripture would teach. It's this concept that, you know, this life is not a one-time existence, that we're going to get reincarnated over and over and over again. So here is Krishna appearing before Arjuna in all his different manifestations, saying, don't worry about that. Don't worry about those you kill. Now, when you're looking at that image, that's communicating that better than words, correct?
That's correct, because, like, if I was, like, standing in Arjuna's situation, right, and somebody came up to me and was just like, hey, don't worry about killing people, I'd be like, yeah, you're probably, you know, not a good guy. But the thing is, like, you know, like, all these faces and everything, like, you can, you know, it's, like, a very powerful visual representation of that connectedness and how, like, multiple people can exist, like, within the same place at the same time and, like, nothing.
Okay, so if you were trying to remember the message of the Bhagavad Gita and someone showed you a paragraph, you'd kind of skim through the paragraph and think about it. If someone were to ask you about the message of the Bhagavad Gita and you saw this image, bam, it would come to you right away.
Right. It makes a lot more sense this way, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, if you're this soldier, like, just hearing something isn't necessarily going to do it. You have to, you know, see it to believe it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think this is, you know, it's kind of the same way with, like, the followers of Hinduism, you know, and, you know, Buddhism. Like, if you're just reading something, it won't really mean a lot to you. But I think, like, this art and stuff is, like, you know, a major way that, you know, like, they keep those customs alive and are able to, you know, like, communicate these ideas to, like, you know, other generations that, you know.
So the huge message for teachers is use images.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
To really grab students, to really inspire them, to really motivate them, to really help them understand.
Yeah.
Okay, now the next image. And anybody who listens to this needs to migrate to my show notes so you can see these wonderful images, so you can understand what we're talking about. The next one, I'm just going to describe it a little bit. It is this image that we refer to as Avada. It is an elephant with a lot of individuals touching this elephant. And these individuals are blindfolded. And so what they're doing is they're feeling the elephant. One of them's feeling the tail, which he thinks is a rope. One of them is feeling the ear, which is a palm leaf. Tell me how that image was used in class.
In Buddhism, it's like this big idea of like honoring other people's, ideas and perspectives. Mm-hmm. And especially with like different religions that they embrace, that was like one of the things that we talked about this year was how people can be like Christian and Buddhist at the same time. And this allows that to make sense, because like if you're Christian, you're seeing it one way. But if you're, you're Buddhist, you're like thinking about like this Avada, you're like, well, no, nobody's really wrong. We can't prove
it. That's beautiful. I mean, I'm not saying no as in I'm agreeing with you.
Right, yeah.
And it's weird how the one person is feeling the ear and thinking it's a palm leaf. Mm-hmm. Another person is feeling the tail and thinking it's a rope. I love that, the way you said that. And this was part of a lecture. This was part of a flipped lecture. Mm-hmm. So when this image clicks on this flipped lecture, does it intrigue you? Does it make you think, what's the deal there?
It really does, because it's not something that you expect to see. Like there's a lot of elephants in like in like the unit that we studied, but like just this particular approach to it, it was like, okay, there's like just looking at it, it's obvious that there's something about perspective going on here, because it's like, why would so many people be trying to feel the same item,
Oh, the wonderful concept of perspective, differing perspectives. Mm-hmm. I love it. Thank you, Lang Shui. Okay, now, so we have Anekantavada, we have Vishvarupa, and then I want to jump to the last one and then talk about the third one last. Okay, gotcha. So we did this, we talked a lot about Asian culture. Mm-hmm. In China, a big subject of art is landscapes. In other words, they look at that as more important than in Western art, where they're obviously portraying individuals a lot. Mm-hmm. So we studied these Chinese landscapes, but then I wanted students to create their own landscapes. And now we're going to talk about students actually taking photographs and morphing those photographs. So the first thing I had you do was take a landscape, and then I had you morph it with an app called Prisma. Talk a little bit about that experience.
That was a really interesting experience, because like the picture I actually used, like it kind of had like a Chinese feel to it, but I actually took this in New Orleans. So I was like, what sort of am I talking about? Like how am I going to go into this and make it look like Chinese art? And sure enough, you apply these elements, and suddenly like you can see it, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of like, it's kind of a cool bridge, because it's like, it takes your experiences and then combines them with something that somebody in ancient China had like years ago. So like your pictures and, like the kind of pictures that were being produced then, like it shows you how much similarity there is between the two. And that was really cool.
So in other words, we're taking a interesting perspective, which is the Chinese approach to the universe. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at images, but then we're creating our images. So we are taking it to another step where we're actually involved in the creation process.
Yeah.
All right, the last one. And this is the easiest way for a teacher to use images, and that is as a hook. In other words, building anticipation for a lesson. Getting kids interested in the subject. Talk about the rape of Nanking.
That was a pretty intense day in class. So Mr. Sturdivant puts these images up on the board, right? And he's like, does anybody know what these are from? Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, it's these black and white photos. Nobody really cares, And he's like, and then he goes on to explain the rape of Nanking. And all of a sudden, all the eyes go back up to these photos, and all these jaws just drop, because suddenly, like, put it in context, these photos become, like, so significant. And, like, we realize what we're witnessing, and we're like, oh, my God. We're, somebody's life is escaping their body in this picture that we're looking at, and this was a big deal, and like it becomes personal at that point.
Right. Some poor soldier is being used for bayonet practice.
Right.
Some poor soul is on their knees and their head is being ejected off their body as their head is being sliced off. These photographs were very disturbing. But sometimes disturbing images are what's needed for 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to care, right?
Well, it's hard to take a disturbing content matter seriously if it's being sugar-coated for you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like you've got to appreciate the gravity of it, and to do so, you have to, really understand the full extent of it by a lot of times seeing it.
Right. So, do you think teachers use images enough?
I don't, especially in social studies classes in particular, because it's like when you read like a book or you're looking at a timeline, it's like it doesn't really resonate with you, but like there's something about seeing a face, you know what I'm saying? Right. If you have a face to attach to an image, it doesn't really leave you. Like that event is like cemented into your head. You know what I'm saying? Because you recognize that person, but they become human to you instead of just another like figure in a book.
And so when we were looking at the images of the rape of the Nanking, some of those victims were actually looking at the camera. When you lock eyes with that victim, you can't forget that.
Right. It's not a name in a book that somebody, you know, wrote at some university. It's an actual person like you that this is happening to, and it, you know, you take it a lot more seriously. Okay, so Lang Shui is the perfect person to talk to because she's just about ready to ride off into the academic sunset here. So to give a high school teacher, middle school teacher, elementary school teacher, college professor, one piece of advice who's listening to this program right now on how they might utilize images. I think showing students images is like the first step, but I think the second step is you need to like find out what your students' interpretations are.
Oh, beautiful. Go with that.
Like, I think, you know, before you even explain it to them, just be like, what do you guys think is going on here? Mm-hmm. And the students will start thinking about it, you know, like whether they're on the right track or not, you suddenly have their interest because like they want to find out, you know, if they're right or not. There's like a kind of some suspense that's almost built there, you know, it's like, mm-hmm. What do you think is going on here? And then you give them the ending or, you know, their answer. And it's like, they won't forget it that way because, you know, they were already exposed to it and they wanted to know what was coming next.
So next year when I'm teaching about the rape of Nanking, I need to put those images up with zero explanation and just let kids think about it a little bit. That's a fantastic suggestion. Thank you so much. Okay, what's going on right after this? Going home, get something to eat?
Yeah, go home, probably work out, take a shower, throw on a choir dress, you know, go.
You gotta do some singing tonight, right?
Yep, I'm at Miss Houston's disposal tonight, so.
What's your song you're singing tonight?
We're doing Omnia Soul. We're doing Let the River Run, and let's see, what's that third one? Africa.
Oh, yeah. I see the rains coming, Africa. Yeah, I'm not going to make it in the choir, man.
It's okay. I'm just there to get up to those high notes. Somebody's got to do it. So.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. Never underestimate the power of pictures. Like I said in the episode, when I was a little kid, I'd always take a book and leaf through and look at the pictures. And I still do it. And so do your students. And so don't underestimate the power of this tactic. So for tomorrow, create a Google slide presentation with compelling images about tomorrow's lesson. These images should be accompanied with sparse text, no more than just a title on each slide. Present with Pear Deck. Load your Google Slides into Pear Deck so that you can prompt students as you travel through the presentation. Challenge students to create their own Google Slides presentation based on your template. Like your presentation, theirs should be image-rich and text-poor. And finally, create a prompt where students must create their own images and then manipulate those images. Consider incorporating the Prisma app to make these images explode with creativity. Please come over to my show notes. Look at some of the wonderful images that Alexandra and I talked about in this episode. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So save your breath and liberate your students' imaginations. And good luck tomorrow engaging your students.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesalansturnevant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.